Aloha! Welcome back to Aina Bear Farm. So this is a special video for us because we are at the 5-year mark of having started our food forest here on the Big Island of Hawaii. So it would take way too much time, a really long video to do like a super thorough tour at this point. And so what I'm going to do is show you guys some highlights of the food forest and just talk about some kind of milestones that we've hit lately this last year. And then I think I'm going to follow this up with some videos that were for some of you that might be interested in a little bit more detail, kind of like the micro level. I'm going to go zone by zone and talk about how the farm is organized by the permaculture zones and kind of zoom in to what's going on in each zone a little bit more. But like I said, for today, we'll just kind of hit the highlights and take a little bit of a walk around, see some cool stuff. As always, we appreciate you watching, and I hope you enjoy. We'll start here with this Raposa mango because it was the first fruit tree that we planted here. And it still kind of stands a little bit isolated up here. And part of that just has to do with where it is in relationship to the rest of the food forest. I plan on not pruning this tree all that much and kind of letting it become a larger shade tree. And so I really kind of wanted to give it a lot of space to be able to spread out. But as you can see by the height and the size of the trunk, this was planted as a tiny little seedling that had maybe 12 leaves on it. And now, after 5 years, it's massive. Still hasn't flowered yet, which might be in part to having not pruned it, but I would think we would see at least a little bit of flowering either way. So we'll see. Maybe over the next year, we'll get some flowers on that. Here in Zone 2, the perennial peanut ground cover is coming in nicely. It's a nice time of year because we're kind of coming out of our wet season, and the peanut is really happy. You can kind of see our progression where we come and cut the guinea grass really short, tarp it, and like for example right here, the tarp just came off a couple weeks ago, and planted little plugs of perennial peanut in that section, and just try to throw down a little bit of cut grass to mulch it, just enough to kind of get it going, and then it will start to fill in all those gaps like it has here. This was planted a couple months ago, and these were all different sections that are now starting to connect with each other, which is pretty cool. That's definitely a milestone. Here's another section that was planted about a month ago. And so here, like, we've got a black sapote tree. It's also gotten pretty big. We've gotten a few fruits off of this guy so far. And it originally had a small little ring of perennial peanut around it, and I just keep cutting the guinea grass and letting it spread. And then here's a coconut that also had its own little small ring, and now those two rings have finally branched out and they've met in the middle, so that's a big milestone. Pretty excited. You can also see the kabocha squash. This looks like a pretty good kind of partnership here where the kabocha squash is able to run its vine underneath the perennial peanut and reroot and stay nice and cool and happy, but get its leaves up there and get some sun. A lot of times the problem I have with kabocha is it runs so far, it starts heading off into the grass, and then you get this kind of stuff where it's really hard to maintain it. You lose the pumpkins, and then you get the weed whacker out to cut the grass, and you cut into pumpkins and they explode and blow up all over your face. And this is much better here. As I kind of pan through this area, you can see like these support trees like the caliandra, the ice cream bean, all getting nice and big. This is a rare Brazilian annona called Invira caju. That is maybe like 12 feet at this point. can see another nice run of perennial peanut. Kukui. This is if you're not in Hawaii or from Hawaii, this is a tree that was brought by the native Hawaiians. It's got a really useful nut on it. Nice patch of Namwa bananas down there. 344 Mac nut grafted variety. This is a Ho'ava. This is a native tree. It's growing really happily under the shade of this huge Gliricidia, which I originally planted to help out this mangosteen, which is a little beat up from the wind, but it's actually growing really well. It's almost as tall as I am. It's got new shoots coming right now. It's probably still a few years away from fruiting, but pretty stoked about that. Here's one facet of our composting operations. Pretty simple. Just have the wire fence there and stuff that full of cut guinea grass, which is, a really thick, tough grass. I mean, this stuff is quite substantial. And then we layer that with cut fresh lawn grass, clippings of comfrey, rabbit manure, food scraps. So this one was just made yesterday. Fill it all the way to the top, and it's amazing. In a month it'll be half that size, and then another month probably ready to put out. And I like to do things like plant papaya next to compost piles because they really benefit from all that extra nutrient coming out of there. We have some mangoes that are fruiting for the first time this year. This is a Keat mango, and it's a pretty small. I mean, you can see not a huge trunk, not a huge crown here, but got several fruits on it, and a few of those will probably hang in there. I'm hoping for maybe 2 or 3. Seems about appropriate for the size of the tree, but really stoked to try those. You can see this purple leaf cassava kind of growing all around. We've harvested a few of those and been eating some delicious cassava french fries lately. This nice verdant field of perennial peanut. Here we've got this nice peach palm right on the edge of that. Some more Gliricidia, more compost stuff that over there. Nice circle of bananas. And as we enter this area under this monkey pod tree, it gets very foresty, a really nice shade where we can grow things like this olena or turmeric. One of my favorite plants, just gorgeous and just starting to come up for the summer. Mamaki, this is a native nettle. Got some really nice health properties with teas. We've got a few coffee plants under here. Katuk, nice edible sweet leaf. The Bele spinach likes a little more sun, so it's actually going to kind of see it leaning way out to capture the edge of that sun. And it won't be long before we're going to have to kind of really manage this monkey pod because they can get absolutely gigantic, but incredible to think that was planted from a tiny little seedling that had a trunk diameter at its biggest part was probably less than an inch. Now this thing is just massive. Very cool. Takes to pruning really well. So it's actually a great tree if you really want some shade. It's just cool here to see the diversity that we've stacked in here. This is the Chinese tea feijoa. Of course, see the perennial peanut ground cover. There's white pineapple up here. That is fruiting now. Be ready in about a month. It's cassava. It's cranberry hibiscus. This is satsuma tangerine. Got the nice bright coleus there. The cana. jaboticaba under the crown of this big ice cream bean, more cassava, another feijoa, more cassava, some little baby pineapples, and on this side, one of my favorite plants is the avapuhi ginger, or shampoo ginger. Just hasn't flowered this year yet, but it's such a cool plant. This is longan or longan, just got some little baby fruits on it this year. It's the second time it's flowered, didn't fruit the first time, so we'll see. Maybe it'll hang on to some of these. Had a great year. One of our biggest lychee trees so far. Huge harvest, so we'll see if this one produces some fruit. Here's another mango that we planted early on as we were developing the food forest. This is mapulehu, which as you can see is a prolific vegetative grower. And one thing that can happen here is that as it's flowering, we tend to get a lot of rain and a lot of wind. And so this season, this tree put on a decent amount of flowers, but most of the flowers got either knocked off or blown off by the rain or the wind. So we ended up with, in this huge tree, we got one fruit that's coming. So it's probably going to be a really tasty mango. But that's why we have so many different varieties of mangoes here, and I'll show a couple other ones, because in any given year, we hope to have one where we get the timing right to where we get big harvests. This is our main crop of white pineapple this year, and it's a little underwhelming in terms of productivity. This is my first time planting them really tight like this. They're about 16 inches apart. And I think what I would change in the future would just be to provide them with more food. And I think, just packing them this tight obviously has its advantages. They don't fall over as much. They shade each other a little bit. And then, hopefully you'll actually get more pineapples per square foot. But they're definitely not as happy and healthy as when I would plant them 2 feet or more apart. So we'll still get a decent crop out of this, and we've got other crops here and there, smaller, like for example, got a few tucked in right next to this Mame mango. And speaking of mangoes, this is another variety which has not actually broken bud since the rainy season. So we've got little buds swelling there. Probably any time within the next couple weeks it will. And then it's anybody's guess in terms of when that's going to flower. It's very random here. It just depends on what the weather is doing, but we can have mango harvests any time of year. We one year had a huge harvest in February. We often see them in the summer. That's kind of the main crop. But I've seen them in the fall. So who knows? Like I said, we try to have a lot of different varieties so that every year we'll get something. Speaking of which, this is Carrie. It's the same age as that Mame, but much more vigorous in terms of leaf growth. And then this one does have some small fruits on it. And we'll see if they hold on and, produce anything decent. It's actually still got new flowers too. So Carrie is definitely a winner in terms of growth here so far. Just nearby we've got a Mame sapote. It's starting to get decent size to it. A couple little fruit down there at the bottom. Let's see if they hold on. Take forever to ripen, so who knows. As I swing around, got this Meyer lemon, which looking a little rough, but prolific grower of lemons. I mean, we've got lemons on the ground, lemons on the tree, both green and yellow, new flowers, new growth. So yeah, looking a little roughed up, but I'm definitely happy with that. And then as we kind of get closer down to the bottom here, this is a Nona salzmani, which is Brazilian beach sugar apple. And it, for the first time, has some flower pods on there. So we'll see. I've never eaten that fruit, so it's my first time kind of seeing it flower and go through that stage, but pretty exciting. This is the newer crop of white pineapple, which will start fruiting next summer. And I just wanted to show this for how I've put the perennial peanut in between, pigeon pea in between, because I wanted to provide a little bit of shade. I've noticed that in spots where my pineapples get a little more shade, they tend to stay more vigorous and green and productive. So we're trialing that. Now we're out here in one of our 2 syntropic style systems. This is a small section where we have 20 fruit trees planted, mostly ulu or breadfruit. So it's kind of focused on that. And I'm not going to go too in depth, but we've got the rows of Tithonia, ice cream bean down the middle here, obviously the bananas for mulch, and we're trying to do our best with this succession here. So, you know, we've got this pigeon pea which surrounds the ulu tree, so it's growing really happy in the summer, just kind of tucked away in a little bit of shade. And we've got support species like the Gliricidia. This is jack bean, which was an early succession species. The banana. This is Sesbania sesbin, which is a really thin shade, but it's a nitrogen fixer and definitely a helper outer. Moringa here and there. More pigeon pea. This is soursop, really tucked in the shade there, and so you kind of get the idea. Like I said, I don't want to go too in depth because I'll do like whole video updates on this, but I did want to include it as part of the overall tour, especially right now we've recently mowed and it's kind of easy to see the definition of everything and see how the rows are laid out. I'm going to make a quick stop here to check out this Malabar chestnut. I was really happy here. This is a tree I would definitely advocate for if you're in Hawaii or anywhere warm enough. Gorgeous flowers and lots of blooms coming. Just a really cool tree. Pretty fast grower if it stays watered and it's in a happy spot. And this grows edible nuts with a high fat content. So produces a lot of different benefits. Definitely recommend this one. This is the zone 3, kind of where it begins, and I wanted to just take a look at these rows of Tithonia. I've got them on these diagonals in zone 3, and wind is a persistent factor here that we have to deal with, and because the property is on a fairly steep slope going towards the ocean, it's not like you can have one row of windbreak, you know, down there and expect that that's going to just calm everything down. You kind of have to have all these multiple places where you're able to slow the wind down. And to some extent, you know, the more we just fill in the forest, the more it becomes kind of self-protective. And this zone 2, as I'm looking back at now, is starting to get to that point where it is dense enough to kind of protect itself. But zone 3 remains pretty vulnerable. And, you know, this is very typical amount of wind for midday in the summer here. It's just that consistent trade wind, which is great. It's one of the reasons why we don't have to have air conditioning. It just keeps everything nice and moderated. But like here's this meringue tree, this really funky, weird shape to it, and it is literally just being held up by some weed whacker string, some plastic string there, just to make sure the wind doesn't decapitate it. And what I had done previously was plant the tithonia really close to the trees. So here's a meringue that's been protected. Now this one did get decapitated. It was planted at the same time, but it's much shorter because it actually did get completely knocked off by the wind. So then I stuck the tithonia in. Well, the tithonia has been great at blocking the wind. However, there's two things. If you don't cut it down, its roots start to grow up into your fruit tree zone and interfere with that. And then, it will go into the seed producing phase, as you can see with the flowers right there, and send out hormones that, make the trees slow down. So I've got a few examples where it has really clearly interfered with the health and the growth of the tree. It doesn't look to be the case right here, right now, but what I'm hoping is that I'll be able to get those walls of tithonia in further away, and then I can come and start just taking these out, or just using them as quick chop and drop to add organic material. As you may have seen in the video just previously before this one, we've installed a lot of drip irrigation out here because as we're getting a little bit further away from the house, it's just really hard to water all this. Summer we can get a lot of drought. And so everything you see right now, all these fruit trees and these little future fruit trees where I've got the circles with the piled up mulch in there and the dead wood ringing around there, those all have drip lines installed now, which is just such a relief because we are heading into the dry season now. Like here you can see trying to just clear out some spots, put some pigeon pea, put some native hibiscus in there. It's kind of a nice mix of that. But it's going to be such a massive relief to basically come over here, just flip that on, turn the channel to, which section I want to water, and then I can go and do other things while all of this is getting watered. And this is as far as we've gotten. You can obviously see the tall guinea grass here where we haven't really mowed. So it's as far as we've gotten with established food forests. But the cool thing about this setup is that it also will allow me to go that way and rapidly expand and kind of mirror what I've done here. And so right now I've got 22 openings for fruit trees, I believe. And I could easily get another 22 over there that would all be watered. And just trying to decide what 22 trees do I want to grow. So if you have any suggestions, is there anything that you haven't heard me talk about that you think would grow really well here and I should give it a try, let me know in the comments section. And besides that, this video is already gone long enough, so I do appreciate you watching as always, and keep an eye out for more videos over the summer. I'm gonna go and break all my zones down, so for those of you that like a lot more detail, we'll have the time to do that video by video. Until then, thanks for seeing us, and we will see you soon. Aloha.